The opinions expressed on the Custody Queen Show are for informational purposes only and are not a substitute for personal, professional legal advice. The persons discussed are fictional and not based on actual clients.
It's that time again. It's Custody Queen time. And today we have a fun show, and it's another show from Vegas. So if you're just listening, make sure you go to Custody Queens on Air and YouTube and check out the beautiful Sin City behind us.
Absolutely. We cannot be more happy to be here. We have Dayn Holstrom joining us again. And I think we're going to jump right into it, right?
Yeah, today's show is all about balance. So thank you everyone for joining us this Saturday on Go Country 105. And let's start with the CQ book. Let me hand the CQ book to you, Sam.
All right, I'm going to ask Dayn a question. And for anyone listening, the CQ book is a book of a million, I'm exaggerating again, a bunch of questions, and let's see if we can find a good one.
Yeah,
See, I'm always suspicious that they've got a separate one already written that they're going to ask me.
See, I'm just going
to I would never tell you if we did. Oh, that one's way too deep.
I don't want to know that about you.
Dayn, would you ever consider living on an island? Why or why not?
Oh, that's an easy one.
So easy.
Hell yeah! Yeah, because that's a throwback to an episode in my life. I was in my 30s, and I didn't become a lawyer till pretty late. I was in my 30s, and we had 4 kids, wife and I, Cheryl, and of which Kristen was the oldest, and I got this disease they call Jimmy Buffett syndrome. And we had already been sailing a lot for years and years and stuff down in the Caribbean and other places. And we literally, I built a sailboat probably about 6-7 years after I became an attorney, and took the whole family. We all lived on it down in Mexico for a year.
Amazing.
And I was homeschooling all the kids. And it was just a phenomenal life experience. And again, living on an island isn't necessarily what it used to be, where today you still have social media, you still have internet, you still have everything else.
Probably have Wi-Fi.
But you also have the opportunity for solitude that you may not have. And so that's part of the balance.
And to add a little bit, I was 16 at the time that we took this excursion. So imagine...
Excursion, now it's an excursion.
Imagine, mini Kristen 16, playing soccer in high schools. I was a sophomore, and friends and dances. I think the Sadie Hawkins dance was right around the time we were leaving. So looking back, I was probably the most opposed to leaving my friends and going on this boat. But Dayn forgot to say that we had sold our house, we sold our cars, we moved into a 2-bedroom apartment.
So you left?
Yes, to get used to living in small quarters.
Yeah.
And my sister and I shared the hull of the boat, which was very small, You
had the V-berth.
Yeah. But I will tell you, some of the most memorable moments in my life were on this boat.
Give me one of them.
Okay, so Dayn and I were both certified scuba divers, and we literally would just jump off the sailboat.
That's so cool.
And you could spearfish at the time in Cabo. And so Dayn and I were scuba diving, and he had spearfished a halibut, and it was a really good size halibut. And we brought it up and we cooked it for dinner.
Right on.
And I don't know if that was the same day or if it was another scuba diving experience, but Dayn had gotten a giant fish hook stuck in his calf.
That's your highlight?
And I'm probably the most non-freak out person in the family. My mom is, oh my gosh, panic anytime she sees blood, and I go to our first aid kit and get the lidocaine, spray it, and I'm literally pulling the fish hook out of Dayn's leg.
I don't want to make this the whole boat trip show, but no, anytime, just a tip, when you're fishing for spear fishing, you have a spear, not hooks. And so, no, that was a different
Okay, so
incident.
that was a different one.
and we were fishing, trolling for Dorado off the back of the sailboat, and we were sailing back, and we caught a beautiful Dorado, and I put it on the deck, and the lures for the Dorado had these giant hooks, and when it flipped its tail up, it went right into my cab. So, but we had a giant first aid kit. We'd gone through courses for training, for navigation, Cheryl and I. We were really prepared for it.
Yeah, prepared was an understatement. He built the electrical
Dane's prepared
on
for
the
everything.
boat. I mean, he knew how it worked. And just one more quick thing. We actually parked the sailboat in Magdalena Bay, and we had stayed there for a night. But it's a bay where the California gray whales mate. And so we were having dinner on the sailboat, in the middle of a bay.
Watching the
and
whales
50
mate.
foot.
Well, no, they would breach and they would jump out, and so you have this breaching whale against a sailboat with the sunrise or the sunset. Just spectacular.
Literally 10, 15 feet from our boat.
Wow.
And we had this picture on our refrigerator for years and years and years with the sunset in the background and a 50-foot whale, 10 feet from our boat, completely breached out of the water. So, now you ask me, hey, you want to go sailing for a year? I'm like, heck yeah, let's go. But 16-year-old Kristen.
There's the long answer to your, would I live
So
on an
yes.
island?
So yes, he would
Yes,
go.
so if anyone was confused, yes, Dayn would live on an island.
All right, so I am going to ask you, Sam, a question.
All right.
Describe one undeniable fact about yourself.
I'm a sleepaholic. I love to take naps.
So
Undeniably.
she does, and she can sleep anywhere, which is the polar opposite
I
of
could
me.
race you to sleep.
Yes, Sam could literally sleep in the corner of any room, and I'm the polar opposite. All my stars have to be aligned. The mood has to be perfect. But yeah, Sam and my husband both go sleep in their cars at work on lunch breaks.
Yes, I'm tired.
Okay,
Yeah.
why don't you have a futon like I have in my office?
Can I have one? I would
I'm
love
sure in
one.
Costco, man, they got these great little folding arms. You can put your head on one arm and you're
Acceptable.
asleep.
Please.
That was
I
awesome.
would never leave. I
Yeah.
would literally.
Well, no, I don't want to encourage that either.
I love to sleep. But a lot of people say, oh, after work, I'm going to go get a drink or I'm going to go on a run. For me, if I'm very stressed out, there's nothing better than like a 15-minute nap.
100%.
Like I got to just reset.
Yeah. People always ask me, what do you do for fun? And I always say, if you give me the option of sleeping with like no kids, like say my parents take the kids for a night, or going anywhere, 99.9% of the time, I will pick sleep.
Yeah.
So, all right, Dayn, you asked me one. And don't go rogue and just make something up.
The quickest way to make you crazy is...
Working for your dad.
Okay, let's not go for the low-hanging fruit
She
here.
has no experience doing.
All right.
All right,
What's the
just
second most? All right.
That was good.
a good way to make you go crazy. I have a hard time talking with people that talk in circles and they don't make any sense. And then I like very direct conversations. That comes directly from Dayn. Mm-hmm. But when someone is trying to tell me their story and they don't get to the point, it's like you're just looking right through them with crazy eyes. So
Yeah, that's fair. You depose people. For sure.
yeah, it's just kind of get directly to the point and let's move on.
There are several great lines that I've learned over my life when people do that. My favorite one is there a caboose at the end of this train?
That's great.
Anyway, all right.
All right, so let's get into today's topic, and it's not one that just applies to lawyers. It applies to people, professionals, moms, dads. It's just how do you manage the work and the home life balance? And I know this is something I struggle with, and I know it's something that Dayn has had to attempt to overcome. I don't know that you ever overcome it, and it's something that Sam struggles with too. So let's Sam, what do you do to help manage that?
I sleep. No, I'm kidding. So I think it's a really good topic just because I think it's twofold, right? It's the worst and best problem to have. If you have a lot going on, something in some way has to give in order for you to feel happy and healthy. And so you have to learn how to manage that. And then on the other side of the fence, having a lot going on is a great thing. So how do you structure that? For me, I think it's really a day-by-day thing. I think if we kind of sit around and consider how much each of us do in the average day, we're going to start to stress ourselves out, or look too far in the future, you're going to stress yourself out. I personally, in my work, like to look at what is ahead of like me for this week. I try not to get too far ahead, because I think if you do, you'll panic.
I agree, and that's something that I've kind of implemented, and I think that everybody had a really hard year. I had a really hard year over the last year, and I struggled with some anxiety and some time management and had a newborn, and I'm very open about that because I know most people are struggling in one way. But one thing that I have implemented for myself is just kind of what you were saying, is I look at what is my next task. And I know Dayn's really big and taught me checklists. And so on my phone, I have checklists, but I really have to focus on one day at a time. And with kids, and I have a daughter in sports and gymnastics, and I have briefs due, and we have court, and you just have to focus on one thing.
And I think the reason why is because you need to focus. It's not always what's just in front of you, but you need to focus on the tasks that you have control over. Right? So if I spend all day stressed about a trial that I've done the work I need to do now on, but that's set for 3 months, I'm never going to focus on the tasks directly in front of me, and I'm going to get overwhelmed.
Yeah. And I love traveling. To me, that is the biggest stress reliever. And one, it's to see new places, to do new things, and to create experiences for my children. That is so important. But it's also to just take a hot minute and forget about everything that you may not have control over. So, Dayn, I know this is something you and I have talked about a lot over the years, and being an attorney, we bear a lot of other people's issues on top of our own. So what have you done over the years to help manage that?
Well, it's first off, I'm in a different place in my life than you guys are, and one of the things looking back is very easy to see is that your priorities and how you want to fill your time is very, very different. So you're at the stage, Kristen, that I was when we had 4 kids, and the most important thing in my life at the time was spending time with those kids. And so the first 15 plus years of my career was Cheryl and I would create this calendar with everybody's schedules, and Cheryl would be driving Kristen to soccer practice in South Orange County, and I'd be taking her brother to baseball practice and t-ball and everything else, and every once in a while we'd meet up together. But that was much of the time because our kids were really, and still are, but in a different way, our lives. And so the biggest thing is, no matter what, and you hit on it, Stan, the biggest thing that I find is important is when you're in it, be in it. Be 100% in what you're doing in the moment, whether it's walking down the street, whether it's preparing for trial, whatever it is. And you'll find that you do so many things and you look back and you go, how in the hell did I do all that stuff?
Right.
And the answer is, it just takes care of itself. When you focus on a task, it's not multitasking. People call it that. It's being 100% in what you're doing and then moving on and being 100% the next thing.
And that's true and so transferable. If something like vacation, like truly unplug when you're on vacation. If you don't, you'll feel like you never had a vacation, and by the time you're back at work, you are still having a need for that. So I think that's a great point.
And I will say, for the first time in 10 years since I've been an attorney, I recently went on vacation to Disney World that I've told you guys all about. And it was the first time that I truly did not really work. Now, I say really because I answered a few emails here and there, but I trusted the people that are working with me, and I trusted that they were doing their jobs. And you know what? They did it exceptional, and I came back and everything was fine. We all survived, and I actually spent such quality time with my children. And for any parents out there that are working full time and have little kids, the mom-dad guilt is real. And you have to make that time with your children a priority. You just have to. And that's often at the expense of some other things.
One of the things about being an attorney is you get so enmeshed in your clients' lives and cases. It's very, very, you've got to be able to object and isolate yourself. But a little shout out to the group that I belong to called Atticus Attorneys out of Florida. And I've been in the group about 4 years now. And one of their mantras, what they teach attorneys, particularly attorneys who run law firms, what they teach them to do is be able to have that work-life balance. And one of their mantras is, hey, exactly what Kristen said. You've hired good people. Trust them, number one. And what you're going to find out is exactly what Kristen found out. They often work not only well, but better without us in front of them micromanaging, not that we ever do that, or telling them what to do or guiding them or sweating over it or anything else. And you know what the next part of it is? It's traveling. It's being off doing things with the people you love and care about in places you really want to see for a third of the time. And those people are super successful. We're in Nevada here in Las Vegas, and another attorney, a good friend of mine, Jason Namey's here as well. Jason he's living that life, and he's really enjoying it. He's a great attorney. He's got a great firm, and a little competitor of Ed's, so you've been on another episode. But they're very friendly, and at the same time, he's living that life and really enjoying what he's doing because he found that balance by letting go.
Right.
And it's not something that just kind of happens super organically. You have to really put time and effort into it. And a good friend of mine was kind of telling a story the other day that she was considering having a baby. And she was concerned that the timing wasn't right. She was concerned that it might interfere with her goals and her ambitions. And, it just might disrupt her lifestyle. And my response to that person is, a child is the most beautiful blessing in the world. And you know what? You can have it all. You can. You just have to juggle different balls. But don't ever let parenthood and your career, they can happen contemporaneously with each other. I promise you, I do it. Dayn's did it. Sam will do it.
I will?
Yes, you will. I have my...
Even Sam!
But you can have it all. It just, you got to make the priorities. And when I say traveling, I go on social media, and the other day I saw this tent, I'm sure they're kind of bougie tents, in Utah. And you can go, and it has a bed, and it's not really tent camping, but I save them. Yeah, glamping. I save those collections, so it doesn't have to cost a lot of money. I just take my daughter to Huntington Beach and stay at the Hyatt, and her and I go for a night together.
Right.
So it doesn't have to be a week vacation. You just gotta plan it. So that's just something that we share, and I think Sam and I love traveling together, like here, and it just makes life a little bit more fun.
Now, this is from a person who was talking about doing custody queens in Tahiti just a little bit ago.
Yes. So you guys can all, so we're talking, we're going to take custody queens on air.
We take work-life balance very seriously here.
But to our defense, it's taken a long time to get here. And Custody Queens has such an amazing team, as does Holstrom Block and Park. So you guys can all trust that when you see Sam and I in Vegas, that our team is back at the office working incredible just for all of you. So if you want a consult with Sam or I or any of our other amazing attorneys, make sure you call us at 1-800-419-7772. That's 1-800-419-7772. All right, so we have a client email. Sam, you want to kind of share it?
Sure. So the email reads, "Hi, Custody Queens. I listen every week. I would love to hire you, but I'm a stay-at-home mom and don't have the money for representation. In fact, my soon-to-be ex lost his job and doesn't have money for a lawyer either. I was wondering if you could give me any advice on what I should document and what I can expect in the process. Thanks, ladies. Lizette."
Okay, so we actually get email inquiries like this very often, and the first thing I say is hiring an attorney. It is an expensive process. However, there's a lot to lose in a custody and divorce case. And in my experience, usually when you go to family or friends, and if they have the ability, people will usually come together to help. So the first step that I would take, Lisette, is have a couple consults. Many attorneys offer free telephone or Zoom consultations. Find an attorney you're comfortable, and then ask questions about payment plans, if there is any, rates or services that firm may offer, and go from there. Make a plan.
Yeah, and a lot of times I hear things like, we have a very amicable divorce, and that's great, but you really need to define what that means. I mean, do you really have an agreement on all issues? And if you don't, and maybe you can't afford representation, there might still be other options for you out there. But above everything, you need the education associated with what kind of right you may or may not be waiving or what agreement you may be coming to. So you do, like Kristen said, want to have that initial consultation to just know what the starting point is.
Yeah, and if you really truly don't have any of financial ability, something that we offer on our website, which is phenomenal, is we offer a lot of resources to, there's not a lot of pro bono attorneys in family law, but we offer resources to legal aid clinics, or we have a resource page on our website that can help guide you through specific processes. But one of the first things I tell people that are calling me that are on a very strict financial budget is, in my opinion, custody is often the most important part of any case. And sometimes you can hire an attorney to help either negotiate a settlement or to represent you in court on that specific issue, and then the other things can be resolved on your own.
In addition, there was something kind of notable in that email, and was that it sounds like her ex lost his job. That may be a very temporal thing, and there may be some access to attorney's fees there, or some other resources up and above self-help, which sometimes is all you have, and that's understandable, but there's a lot of stuff out there. So I wouldn't disqualify yourself for representation before you have a consultation and you know what that means.
Yeah, and Dayn taught me something, and I'm gonna let him elaborate, but I always say that a lot of issues are time sensitive, and a lot of cases come to us where a party thinks they can do it on their own to save money, or hire a low budget attorney that is not qualified to do the work that you're asking for. What happens at that point, Dayn?
Well, that's where we tell the client it costs a lot less money to prevent bad things from happening than it does to fix them once they have happened.
Right.
And it's sometimes they cannot be undone.
So what's an example of that exact situation?
Somebody, for instance, thinks they have an agreement, and one of the things that really comes out, and Sam touched on this, is that you say, okay, so what's the agreement for custody? And the answer back is, well, he wants week on, week off, or she wants week on, week off, but I'm planning on moving to Tennessee next week. And you're like, well, what's the plan? We haven't talked about it. And of course, I'm asking myself, what do you mean you have an agreement then? It's, right. Again, or again, a variation of he wants, she wants kind of a thing, depending on who you're talking to. And it's clear that they haven't fleshed it out. They haven't said who's going to drive, who's going to transport. I don't know. How are you going to handle with the work schedule? I don't know. It's that kind of thing. So rule number one, as Kristen said, do a couple consults.
Right.
People do a free consult or a low-cost consult. You're going to get an idea of their knowledge about what they're doing, but number two, you'll get a different perspective and insight from different attorneys. And one might really plant a gem in your mind about what's really important to you. So do that. The courts in Southern California at least have a facilitator's office, which will help you fill out your forms. They won't represent you. They may or may not give you a little bit of limited advice about what to put in your forms or not, but they'll help you fill them out and file them with the court. That gets you in the door. Some counties, Riverside County by way of illustration, San Bernardino County, are counties that make recommendations when you go to mediation. So it's very important to make sure that you're prepared to communicate to what's called the child custody recommending counselors in those counties about what's going to happen. Why? Because if you don't agree, if you make an agreement there, they'll memorialize it for you. If you don't reach an agreement, they're going to make a recommendation to the judge.
Right.
And so being prepared walking into that is huge in those counties. Other counties like Orange County, no recommendation. So they process those cases very, very differently. And each county is a version of recommending versus non-recommending. And again, talk to Kristen, Sam, about what county you're in and what the situation is. But talking to people in advance, getting financial assistance, as Kristen talked about, all of those are great ways to help, but the worst thing that can happen, and it will cost you in terms of pain and anguish and money, is you think you got it dialed in and you don't, and you go in and your case gets completely mishandled and upside down, and you're like, I was in court last week and the court gave my ex custody and I have limited visitation, what do I do? And the answer is, basically any solution is going to take a lot of time.
Right.
Because whatever findings the court made that caused the court to make that, you have to show that there's been some kind of a change, and that takes time.
And money.
So rushing off into court is usually not a solution.
Yeah, and I also see domestic violence happening a lot, where someone genuinely needs a restraining order, and they either A, don't do anything because they think it costs too much money, or they think there's a filing fee. In California, there is no filing fee to file a request for a domestic violence restraining order. So not doing something and not protecting yourself is generally not the answer there. So that's a specific instance where I would always say, get a consult. But they nailed it. I can't tell you how many calls I've taken over the last 10 years, and someone calls me and says, well, I filed it and I served them, but then we were working it out, so I didn't go. Well, guess what? The other side did appear. The court found that you didn't take the time to be there. There wasn't a call, and the court makes orders. So now instead of
signed something.
Yeah. And instead of Sam and I handling it from the beginning and it kind of a streamlined process, now we have to be miracle workers and try to undo everything that was done. So that's just a little tip. I would always encourage everyone to have multiple. Find the right attorney for you, the right personality. If it's a significant financial case and you are not the spouse that generally makes all the money, you have options. That's where you call Dayn, and you can get Dayn's information on our website as well as hbplaw.com. So
a real quick point just to add on to your domestic violence situation. It's important to know that doing nothing is always doing something. And so, for instance, in the case of domestic violence, particularly if you're a victim of domestic violence, California sees two things happening. One, a perpetrator of domestic violence is presumed to be an unfit parent and has problems when the court is convinced that domestic violence has occurred. However, from the public social service side, if you are a victim of domestic violence and you do not do something to protect your children, not from necessarily being abused themselves, but from witnessing the abuse to you, the victim, then they can find you as an unfit parent because you failed to protect your children from being subjected to indirect child abuse by witnessing the abuse to you, the parent.
Right.
So doing nothing is always doing something.
And an example that I've seen quite a bit with that set of facts is, during the pandemic and COVID, a lot of people were coping in different ways, and drinking became a pretty big issue in a lot of cases.
Right.
And if you have to go to work and you leave your children with the other parent who you know has an alcohol problem or a drug problem, and you are using that person as daycare because it's easy for you, that is not protecting your children, and you are likely going to have to answer to the court for that.
And it's going to get brought up later. I mean, you then run into court and say this is a problem, but for the past couple of years, it hasn't been a problem. It's only a problem now that we're separating. You're going to run into a problem.
Yeah. So, all right, well, let's wrap up on a little bit of a high note, because this ends our tour in Sin City for part 1, because I loved it so much. I think we got to come back.
We have to come back.
Yeah, and we have to have Ed on again and Dayn on again, and we can kind of have a part 2, just gives Sam and I another reason to balance that work-home life, But I want to ask, Sam, what is the one thing other than sleep that you do to de-stress?
I'd probably say run. I was a cross-country runner in high school, soccer player my whole life, and I'm one of the few people that enjoy running. I probably shouldn't run with all of my pre-existing injuries, but that's probably my number one thing. I could run forever.
Yeah, when you say run, the end result is you on a motorized bike with your foot or not the motorized. Remember when you broke your foot?
Yeah.
That's what I envision every time you tell me you're running.
Listen, I was back at work in a day and a half.
I know, but
Not
it
a
just,
problem.
Yeah,
I
that's
break
what I see.
About one bone a year. Aflac's losing money on me.
Yeah, I need a wrapper and bubble tape. All right, Dayn, what do you do? I know this answer, but what's one thing you do?
What do you think I do?
Play the guitar.
That's one thing I do. It used to be, flying. When I was piloting my own plane, I would do that, and that was a very cool experience. Playing guitar, I do. I like some limited video games because I can tune everything else out, and that's cool. But and obviously when your mother drags me along on one of her many hikes,
it's very distressing for you.
She'll say 3 miles, and then it's like an 8-mile hike.
Yes. So yeah, me and the dogs all kind of drop one after the other.
How about you, Kristen?
I have 2 things, actually 3, really quick. Shopping. great retail therapy, you know. 2, massages. Love spa.
Yeah, that's right.
Love trying to see if we can fit in the spa before we leave. And 3 is just spending time with my kids. You know, there's not a whole lot that makes me more happier, and finding that individual time with each child is just so important. But yeah, I mean, my daughter and I love to go get manis and petties, and she orders the glitter and the flowers and the extra massage. And the next
Were
thing
you telling me though, she's like just knows how to tip?
Oh yeah, she
getting in
pulled
there?
the 20 out of my purse and just told me she handled the tip. But you know, just whatever suits you. I love alone time too. You know, binge watching SEAL Team SWAT. You know, my jam.
Shout out.
So, but it was so fun having you guys on this morning with us, and every Saturday on Go Country 105.
That's right. And make sure to check us out on all social media platforms. Also check Kristen and I out on our Instagrams. Kristen's at Custody Queen Kristen. I'm at Samantha McBride. You can also check out Custody Queens and Custody Queens on Air. You can give us a call at 1-800-419-7772. That's 1-800-419-7772. And thank you, Dayn, as always, for coming on our show. It's a pleasure.
Yeah, and make sure you follow our social medias because we always have giveaways. And if you are looking for more detailed advice on complicated divorce issues, there is no one better to get it from than Divorce Authority Dayn Holstrom. So make sure you check his podcast out. It is streaming on all platforms, and I hear he's got some giveaways coming away to, you know, that are going to be shown to everyone on his social media. So make sure you follow us all because we just love you guys. And remember,
Let love rule.